Okay, welcome back, listeners, to part two of our two-part Artemisia. This is Arts and Crimes, and I'm your host, Kelly.
And I'm Brandon.
And I'm your temporary guest co-host, Josh.
I forgot this was a part two.
Yeah, it's a part two.
I know. I was just thinking, what was part one? I don't remember.
Very impactful. It's because it was a late night recording, and you were.
Yes, Michaela
We-
commented that I was super out of it.
But you showed us a bunch of pictures.
Yeah.
And
For Judith slaying
Huh?
Hilarus.
The old beheading
The
pictures.
beheading paintings. Yes, and famously, the best one of them was painted by a woman.
A woman.
famously.
Yes, which is outrageous. Uh, so we're going to talk about this outrageous woman today. But first, we should probably do our week checks. Saying what way?
Okay. I don't think I can do that. The
What?
constant what?
I wasn't going to stick with it the whole time.
Okay.
Let me tell you, I already got my week check set. You
Oh,
guys need
I
a
mean,
minute.
I'm
If you need a minute to simmer.
you can go first.
Go for it.
When I tell you how upset I am at those Canvas hackers. Okay? I'm so mad at them.
Yeah.
They
They have a name, and it's Shiny Hunter.
Shiny Hunter, more like dingy poo-poo heads.
That should stay in there for sure.
Hate them. It's a stupid name. Also, if you're gonna like ransom some wealthy something, don't attack education. We already have enough issues. Like teaching and dealing with all that. There's other people with a lot more money and
It was a ransom?
Yeah. You know what's funny is back in the day, like, right before the pandemic or whatever, when ransomware was not as pervasive, they would frequently talk about how they avoided, like, we don't ransomware hospitals, we don't do schools. They had this, like, quote unquote code. But then they realized that hospitals have to pay and schools have to pay. And all of a sudden they were like, you know what? Never mind. We do those things. Like, they had this
they're horrible people.
code, and then they went, oh, we could make more money if we don't have this stupid moral code. Never mind, we're criminals. Let's avoid it. Like, yeah, okay.
Jeez. Well, I'm really annoyed about it because it doesn't affect my students negatively. They're still turning in all their stuff. The only thing negatively affects them is that it takes me longer to get grades synced from Canvas to Skyward. So let me just really quickly express my frustration with what I've had to do for the last couple of days because I have to go in and manually, after I grade everything, I have to manually move it over and then verify it's correct in Skyward. So I have to double check that every assignment, because with me, the whole point of students in art is for them to have a positive experience and to learn, right? But my expectation is not that they all come in as artists. So as long as you like improve or change or whatever, you can resubmit your assignment as many times as you want, and I'll give you additional points if it's improved from the previous version. Because if I like give you an assignment and then I critique that and you don't have an opportunity to like improve that and like see that critique in action, it feels like a little bit of a lost opportunity there for me. But what that's done for me, trying to be a good teacher, means not only do I have to go back and re enter all of the new grades, I have to go and double check all of the past grades if the student's percentage doesn't match perfectly. So I was doing the math because I have around 230 students currently. And then depending on the class, I have anywhere from like my upper division class, which I only have one, only has like 15 assignments. So that's a lot easier to double check. But my other classes all have like 30. So I was like doing the math, and it's like somewhere around like 5,000 checks that I have to do to get everything moved over. And then in addition to that, I have students that are like emailing because they made up productivity points or they wanted to turn something in late that already got graded, and they want to resubmit something that already got graded because my dead day was yesterday. So up into the end of the day yesterday, they could fix stuff. And so as soon as I sit down to work on stuff, I had students coming in and students coming in. So I couldn't get into any kind of flow. I was like trying to get stuff done and I couldn't. And at second period, I was like, you know what? When you get home, you can order yourself a burger and cry. That is your reward for the day. So I hope those hackers feel good about themselves.
They got tens of millions of dollars. They're probably feeling pretty good.
Well, they should give me some.
Oh man.
Well, if you're hackers, if you're listeners on the pod, send Kelly just maybe $1 million.
$1 million.
Yeah.
I'm not picky.
Yeah.
You know that song, Evanescence? She's like, 50,000 tears I've cried. That one?
Yeah.
$2 per tear. That's only $100,000. I'm not asking a lot.
Okay, yeah. Not even $1 million. She's gone down
You know
to
what?
100,000.
50, what is that? 50,000?
You are negotiating with yourself here.
Okay, let me renegotiate. So 50,000 tears I've cried. For some reason, I have to make it match with the song. So 50,000. Do the math for me.
No.
A million and a half is 500,000. So 500,000. No. You know what? Just
If we end up back at $1
$1
million, I'm just going to, just avoid the math and just say, you know what, a nice clean
clean, even million. That's all you got to do.
Okay.
And then you can also listen to Evanescence while you do it.
If the ransomware attack, so the company that owns Canvas Instructure is based in Utah.
Mm-hmm.
If the hackers reach out to us and we're like, well, here's $1 million, do you think Instructure would then sue you and be like, give me my $1 million back?
I think there's plenty of proof that I have no idea how they did it or any connection. Yeah. And I'll play this pod because I'm posting it tomorrow. So,
but then they can claim,
there's no way that you'd keep the money.
Why wouldn't I? They gave me $1 million.
Like,
not even for democracy.
Even for democracy.
Why can't I keep
it? So if I steal something from Josh and give it to you before I'm caught, I go to jail and you get to keep the thing.
Yeah, that's true.
Yes.
I'm saying this whole podcast is evidence that Instructure would use in the trial and be like, it's our money. No, it's my money because they gave it to me.
To me for my 50,000 tears.
And you gave it to them. They didn't steal it.
It was a gift.
It was a payment.
Yeah.
For services rendered.
Yeah.
Ownership or
I feel like
it's
they'll play it and Instructure will be like, yeah, she can keep it.
it is 9/10 of the law.
Yeah. Something like that.
What's the word?
Possession.
Possession.
Thank you.
Having it.
Yeah. So your week check is how bad guys made your life worse. My week check is going to be how good guys made my life worse.
Uh-oh.
Oh, no.
So I didn't scoot here, which
We're bad guys.
which you guys are so happy about.
Yeah.
But the reason that I didn't scoot here is because May 5th,
You now need a scooter license.
you need a motorcycle license.
Ooh. That's right.
The Utah lawmakers passed a law that electronic vehicles that hit certain braking points are considered motorcycles. And my scooter does that. So it's a motorcycle.
Oh, you
And
got a scooter.
I don't have a motorcycle license. I'm supposed to register it, but guess what?
You have to pay.
Well, sure. But the DMV is like, we don't register scooters at this time.
So you can't.
So there's a law that says I need to have it registered, but the government entity that I would go to get it registered is like, we don't register those yet.
All of Utah's like, get those dirty scooters off
Yeah.
the road.
So I also need to insure it, which I did the math. And driving to tracks and paying gas money, or driving to tracks on my scooter and not paying any gas money but having to insure my scooter, it's a wash.
Sustain costs.
Oh no, they've took away the joy and the financial benefit.
So,
You could become a biker.
well,
You know how mad Dad would be if Brandon got a motorcycle?
No, like a pedal bike.
Oh, he would be okay with that. But
yeah,
you would
I'm
still
sure
have
that
to
he
wear
would,
all the proper PPE.
but like a bicycle does not fold up and fit under my desk nearly as nicely.
Yeah, that's true.
And if it can go over 20 miles per hour on its own power, it's also a motorcycle. So I would have to pedal the crap out of that bicycle to get to work at the same speed I am with my scooter. So I get to go to work all sweaty and not be able to fit it under my desk. And
You wrote cheetah blood on it?
so I understand that the lawmakers are trying to keep people safe. I don't know about that. I think they're probably trying to keep property safe because those stupid kids squirreling around in the grass in the park and
Mm.
stuff. Friday, I was like, I could scoot into work. Like literally in the announcement, it talks about how police are not going to be pulling people over to check if they have a license. Like that's not a good reason to pull someone over. So as long as they don't do anything wrong, they'll never catch me.
Oh.
They're going
But
to enter this podcast into evidence.
Yeah. This
Again, this
podcast
is the
has
second
become
one.
it doesn't
really-
matter
yeah.
because I'm not breaking the law. I
Or so he would
even
have you believe.
even with all those thoughts, I still was like, man, if something goes wrong, just it's not worth the risk. So I'm over here like it's not worth the risk. I better not do it. My scooter is now indefinitely parked until I figure out my life. So everybody who knows me personally can be so happy I'm not scooting anymore and putting my life in danger.
I mean, mainly I was concerned about you scooting on the Mountain View corridor over here.
Yeah. Like the big
I think
road.
it was safe to scoot to the track thing. It's like all surface roads,
Surface roads? Can you help me understand that?
like not a highway.
Mm.
And as opposed to underground roads or sky roads. Like Rainbow Road, that's not a surface road.
Oh man, I would be way too afraid to scoot on Rainbow Road. But
Well, if they give me $1 million, I'll kick back a few hundred to you.
oh nice.
You can call it your scooter friend.
I like it. Thank you. The positive, there is a positive though, is that I have a Helldivers date with my brother
Woo!
tonight.
So excited.
That'll be fun. Trying to think if there's any, fun anecdotes that I can share.
Yeah. You were supposed to be the positive week check.
I know it's been a downer week
Help
for
offset
everybody.
Kelly and I.
Okay, here's my week check. This is positive. So we have a new intern at work on the data team that I met this week,
Okay.
and
Boy, I hope this is positive.
yeah, he came in and he introduced himself. And he was like, "Oh, my name's Khaled." And I was like, "Okay, nice to meet you, Khaled." Like DJ Khaled.
I was
Yes.
about to say
Almost everyone says like the DJ.
DJ
Yes, like
Khaled.
DJ Khaled. And then his boss,
DJ Khaled. There's no way I couldn't address him like that. I apologize.
his boss was talking, and he's like, "Oh yes, and we all met Khaled." And I was like, Khaled. He said his name was Khaled. He said, "Well, he says that to white people, like to the Americans." But those, I was like, I can say that. And so I went up to him later, and I was like, "Okay, you said your name's Khaled. How do you really pronounce it?" He's like, "It's pronounced Khaled." And I was like, "Khaled." And he goes, "When did you do that?" And I was like, "I just made the sound you made." Anyway, it was really funny. So that was fun. And so then I saw
Wait,
him like,
Proof
that
Josh isn't old.
does that mean that DJ Khaled is actually
DJ Khaled.
Khaled? I don't think so.
DJ Khaled?
That would be kind of fun, actually, though.
Yeah.
And he was like, mostly people that speak like an Arabic language can say it like that. And I was like, well, I'm super. I can go. It's really amazing. So that was fun.
You gotta put a little haktui on it.
Yeah. So there you go. That was. Oh my
Wait.
gosh.
You like that one.
Like, how is she getting away with these things?
Sorry. I sneak them in real quiet.
Anyway, so yes, that's my week check.
Good job.
Good job. Okay. Well, now we're going to talk about Artemisia or Artemisia. I've heard it both ways. Oh
Have
no,
you ever heard it Artemisia?
No.
Well, then let's do that one and train all of the podcasters wrong, podlings wrong as a joke.
Also, I was talking to my Gemini, and I was like, because I'm struggling with these new mics, and it was like, this mic system that you're gonna have is gonna be really great for your sweet podlings. And I was like, shut up, Gemini.
You're not part of this.
You're not part of the team.
So Artemisia.
Artemisia. Okay,
Artemisia.
so I do have to give a really quick warning because in just a little bit, we're going to talk a little bit about rape because that happens, and there's a subsequent trial that's a fairly significant event in her life. So I'll try and give like a warning right before, so that if you don't want to hear about it, you can just go fast forward, like 5 or 10 minutes.
And then you can get back to us saying Artemisia.
Yeah, and bring back the joy in your life. So Artemisia or
Artemisia.
Artemisia. Oh,
Artemisia.
you're gonna mess it up for me. This is a whole nother Medici or Medici. What did you? Don't even. Anyways,
Medici.
there it is. So she was born in Rome, July 8th in 1593, to Orazio Gentileschi and Prudencia Montoni. So her mother died when Artemisia was only
Artemisia.
12. And
Funny thought. You said she was born in Rome, and I was like, how old is this girl? And
Rome's people are still being born in Rome
that's exactly
today.
what I thought then. I was like, hey, wait a minute. There are still babies being born in Rome. That's wild.
It's crazy. Hi, Rome, baby.
They probably have old-timey names, though. It's a tradition in Rome.
Yeah.
Or just like Italian names.
Yeah, they're pretty Italian
Yeah.
names.
Probably pretty. Like Artemisia.
Yeah.
So
So
Artemisia.
Artemisia.
there you go. So her father was
It
a.
would be hilarious if that is the correct pronunciation.
Everybody's been saying it wrong.
Yeah.
She's like up there in painter's heaven, like finally.
She's like, let me paint you, getting your head sliced off as payment for you finally correcting it.
You shall be immortalized in your death.
Excellent.
So her father was also a pretty well-known painter. He wasn't a famous painter. But they lived in the heart of the art district in Rome at the time. And so after her mother died, it was left to her father, Orazio, to kind of handle the education of the 3 kids. So I have heard that there was 4 kids, and I think I said that last time, but more consistently, there are only 3 kids. And only 2 brothers have ever been named. So if there was another one that maybe
loved him.
Yeah, nobody loved him or maybe died. I don't know. But it was Artemisia and her 2 brothers,
Artemisia.
Francesco and Giulio, are the 2 that have
Giulio.
names that I'm aware of. Yeah. And again, he painted quite a lot, but they were not particularly well off or wealthy. They were somewhat struggling. And one of the proofs of this is that they didn't have any manservants in their house. So they were really slumming it. But also, their father, Orazio, was not particularly social man. He preferred to be alone and to work alone if he could. So it was really, really common. I know we talked a little bit about this with Caravaggio.
Caravaggio.
But it was really common for artists to have, like a group of artists that would help them. They would, paint the flowers or work with, skin tone or whatever it was that they were doing to help.
Mhm.
And then the artist would compose it and do all of the like main big things and like details and that kind of stuff, but they would have somebody else kind of filling in the rest. And that was not uncommon, but Orazio didn't love doing that because he just didn't like people, it seemed. um and that also, like, he, in the books that I read, they're like, obviously he cared more about his kids, but we don't have any proof of that. Like that he like wanted to hang out with them. um and in fact, there was, so the sons were being educated and were, traveling in the area and out and about, and people were like witnessing them. But Artemisia was um being treated much like many women were, of the time, and she was sort of just sequestered in the house. And even though she was w- the most talented painter in the house, other than maybe her father when she was younger, she wasn't allowed to like leave the house. She wasn't allowed to go purchase paint. Like, women weren't allowed to purchase paints or painting supplies. Um, so the only places she was seen was, and a lot of this they get from like the court trials and like letters and documentation from people around the area, because in her youth, she was illiterate, so she wasn't taught to read or write, because why would women need to know those things? And so they would see her like looking out her bedroom window, or she would be seen at the church. Those are kind of the two places she was allowed to go, to church or her bedroom. um
The church or her bedroom.
Not great. So, and but in some of her early paintings, she still was able to sign her name. So her father was still obviously giving her some education, but she was not allowed in her father's workshop either. So she had to do all of her painting kind of on her own in her room. But she was still receiving some tutelage from her father. And so she was able to sign her name in her paintings, or at least initial it. Um, so that's sort of her young life up until um around when she was 16. Her father started working with a gentleman named Agostino Tassi, who was a really well-known prolific landscape painter of the area. And Tassi was actually getting paid more than Orazio was for their work that they did combined. Or at least on paper he was getting paid more. So it was kind of this dynamic of Tassi being a little bit of the higher end painter. And so he, in some places it says that he invited Tassi to come and teach his daughter some skills with
Mhm.
painting. In other sources, it just says that he allowed Tassi to be around the house, because he was, there working with him, and that's where Orazio's studio was. And this is where we're going to start getting into where things get a little dark for Artemisia. So if you're uninterested in hearing about all of this, just skip forward for a little bit. Um, so Tazi came with a friend of his whose name was Cosimo, not a Cosimo from the Medici
A
family,
different
a
Cosimo.
different Cosimo. And
Okay.
yeah, keep
Cosimo from the Medicis was famously not attractive, right?
correct. Yeah.
Quasimodo is the name of the hunchback in Notre Dame.
Oh,
Did we
yeah.
not make that connection before?
I don't know, did we?
I don't remember
I
it.
Is
could
this a
have sworn we
callback?
did.
Am I having the same revelation?
Somebody that's just recently listened to that, let us know. Um, but they started hanging around the house a lot, and so and I read through, because what they have is the full transcript of everything that happened from the trial, because this obviously went to trial, and it was one of the longest trials for women in this situation. that had been
So they
recorded.
kept the full transcript?
They kept the full transcript of
So they
things.
had like a stenographer?
Yeah, or at least close to that,
But they
right?
didn't use, I can't imagine they had a little fancy keyboard with 7 keys to work on.
No, I would
Probably
imagine
not.
not. I don't know how they did it, but they have, and there's like the transcripts from like from Caravaggio's cases. I mean, they've been keeping transcripts for a long time.
Who do you talk slower?
Yeah. Repeat that. Wait, repeat that. Stop.
Go back.
Go back.
I wonder how long shorthand has been around. Now I'm curious if they were just writing in shorthand
I think shorthand came around first.
before the typewriter. I would
before
assume
the
so.
stenographer.
Nah, like I'm saying shorthand, like hieroglyphics.
They wrote in hieroglyphs.
They probably did.
The scholars are like, what the heck?
The very first system developed in 63 BC by Roman orator Cicero.
Well, then they're in Rome. They're the heart of shorthand.
Yeah,
This
it
is
was
the short
definitely
land
shorthand.
motherland.
Yeah.
The shorthand motherland. Yeah. So okay, all right.
It's okay.
Mystery solved.
Mystery solved. Yeah.
I think I'm just trying to avoid a rape trial, so I'm like,
Oh,
let's talk about
gird up
something
your
else.
loins. Here we go.
I'll try and make it as tasteful as you can't. You can't make rape tasteful. It's just like I will keep out.
It's rape, yeah.
Yeah, there's no such thing. But I will keep out it. I keep out anything graphic. So,
Okay.
anyways, so he's around the house and he sees Artemisia, who at the beginning of when Tassi starts hanging around the house is 16. When this happens, she is 17. And so he starts seeing her and he's like walking around with his friends and he's like, hey, pretty lady, let's go for a walk. And she's like, fine, because she can't go anywhere. And his friend Cosimo is like, hey, you should give him your sweet honey. And she was like, no, nobody gets this without a ring. And he's like, I think that you've already given it to people. And she's like, I haven't and I won't. And left. And then they continued to come around and be like, hey, you should like do stuff with him. And she's like, no, I absolutely will not. And so then he was like, fine, we won't, but like I'm really a good guy, and starts like walking around with her and like taking her on walks where like she hasn't been able to walk around much anyways. So um eventually it starts being like very commonplace for him to be at the house. People start seeing him around the house really often and it's like no big deal. But the other problem is that Orazio, as we said, doesn't like people, doesn't like being around people, and is sort of gone a lot. So he wasn't at the house as often as he should have been, maybe, or left her alone when he shouldn't have, or I don't know. The person to blame is Tazi here.
Is Tazi is he her dad's age?
Yes.
Okay.
He's a fully adult man. And so quite a lot older than she is. And so one night he decides that he's had enough of the games and he violently has his way with her. And she doesn't immediately report it for a couple reasons. So one is that a woman that has lost her virginity at that time is her existence is much more of a bargaining chip for the family. So they use it to marry off to other people. She is more of a product to be sold than a person, and especially like in wealthy situations. So her father like had planned to marry her off to somebody for a wealthy connection. The second reason she didn't tell anyone is because afterwards Tazi said that he would marry her. And if he married her, then she would no longer be dishonored because that's the person that took her virginity. And so, in the eyes of the situation of court and law and whatever, if he married her, then she was still like a good woman. And so he promised he would marry her, but only if he got to keep doing what he wanted to her. And so she kept it a secret and continued to let him kind of have his way because the only way she could protect her family and her honor was by marrying this gentleman. And in the court transcripts, she talks about how she firmly believed that he was going to marry her because when other men came around as marriage prospects, Tazi would chase them away. Um, so she felt that he was sincere in that marriage arrangement. And then her father found out what was going on, and he was livid. He was super mad at her and Tazi. And so he decided to like step in. And when he did, he found out that Tazi was actually already married. So he could not marry her because he was already married to somebody else. So Orazio took Tazi to court for I forget what the phrase is, but essentially because he sullied his daughter and potential ability to make uh, familial and wealthy connections there. So the court case was technically a rape case, but it was to prove whether or not Orazio had lost um, like financial and political standing, I guess. Um, so they take him to court, and she explains what happened. And his rebut is that she's a woman of the night and that she was out all the time at like brothels and stuff, which is why they had to get all the testimony from everybody around town to be like, hey, did you see her in brothels? And everyone's like, no, we saw her at
Just like
church.
at the church or at her bedroom
Yeah,
window.
church or house, church or house. That was it. And then they also found out that the reason that Tazi was married to the person he was married to is because he also raped her and had to marry her.
Mm-hmm.
But the reason he was in Rome was because he had a mistress that was paying for him to be in Rome because he was running from his wife. So he was like not a good guy at all. Um, and so all of this is kind of coming to light, and the judge is like, we got to figure out how to know that what you're saying is true, to Artemisia. And so they tortured her to see if it was true, because they believed at the time if you tortured somebody and they didn't change their story, then they were telling the truth. And so the torture they decided to use was where they like put your thumbs together and they like crush them essentially, which was really dangerous for artists and especially like your hands, your like fingers. And so it was taken very seriously what she said, which she didn't change a single word of her story under duress or not. Um, and so it was like this trial of a century that she was able to prove that it happened, and she won the trial. However, it was like a bittersweet victory because yes, she was victorious. Tassi was sentenced to 5 years of exile, but he never actually had to serve any of his time. He didn't have to leave Rome because he had a lot of connections in his like painter world. It is so crazy to me, the like wild like life of painters. Like the crazy life that Caravaggio had was just before this. And then, they're like having duels and like committing crimes. And then they're like, I don't have to do that because I'm a connected painter. And so he didn't like, it's just wild to me because that doesn't feel like what would happen now. But I think a lot of people are getting away with crimes that are very similar, but maybe it's now the politicians are the
Yeah,
Wild
well,
West. Yeah.
actors, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like the painters were the actors of the old days.
The actors, the athletes, the whoever the top dog was of entertainment, I guess.
I think if you can please rich people in some form, then they protect you.
Yeah. Well, and they shouldn't have protected him because
'Cause
he
he's a
wasn't
big
a
jerk.
he was a big jerk. He wasn't a good guy. And in fact, during his quote unquote 5 years of exile, he just continued to do all the same stuff and was convicted of another rape with another sentence of 5 years that he didn't serve.
Why didn't they torture the rapist?
Um, because I it didn't say why they didn't. My guesses are because he was already a famous painter and she was a woman that was making these claims. And so they were like, well, we can't harm his hands. and she's just a woman. So, you know, I guess her, like he was a bigger, if things went wrong, it would be more trouble for them if things went wrong for him, I guess. I don't know.
Hmm.
But that's not uncommon, right? Like the witch trials, they tortured all of the witches, not the people accusing them.
Well, but they were accusing him. Like he was the accused in this one.
I guess that's true. They just want to torture women, I guess. um, so um, so yeah, he sort of never really. It's like not great. He doesn't really have to deal with justice, except that I assume that he probably had a whole bunch of like STDs and died from syphilis. That's what I think.
High probability.
Yeah. So there he goes. But Artemisia, on the other hand, even though she was victorious, she was still ruined. And she was looked very negatively on.
Was Artemisia victorious, or was her dad victorious?
So her dad was victorious because it was his lawsuit.
Yeah, that's the thing that's crazy to me. It's like
Yeah.
she's the victim, but she's like not even.
Doesn't actually matter in this situation. Yeah. Yeah, which is like not uncommon because she really was, it was more that she was property
Yeah,
and
he broke
potential.
his stuff.
Yeah.
That was essentially the lawsuit.
Yeah.
In defense of the father, it could be that yes, he pursued this as a legal thing because this was his best chance of doing
Some kind
something.
of justice.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not saying that the father was not a good guy and he was just like, "Oh, you broke my stuff." I'm not saying that, but
Yeah.
legally speaking,
Mm,
You broke my stuff.
he was the
yeah.
wounded party.
Yeah. Yeah, and like there's not a lot, honestly, there's not a lot written about Orazio and especially about like his true feelings about all this. It does talk about how their relationship was not good after this.
Between him and his
Between
daughter.
him and his daughter.
Hmm.
Yeah. And so in order to, so she, women after a situation like this had kind of three options. If you were wealthy enough, you had three. If you weren't, you had two. So they were wealthy enough and well connected enough to have these three options. So the first was
None.
a nun. You had to go to the church and become a nun. Correct. The second was the streets and take up a life of sex work. Or the third was you could pay a hefty dowry and convince somebody to marry her so that she could restore some semblance of honor. And so the father paid a hefty bounty. So Orazio paid a hefty bounty,
Dowry.
dowry, thank you, to, so his lawyer, the lawyer that represented them, had a brother, and he's like, how about him? And paid a lot. And in late in the night, they were secreted to a church because Orazio was afraid that Tazi would come with his like gang of artists to like
Gang of artists.
I know.
They all show up spinning paintbrushes. What you got here? Is that
Is that a wedding? Exactly. Josh is snapping if it doesn't come through.
Little West Side Story.
I love this lawyer who's just like he's like Better Call Saul.
Yeah.
He's just solving all the problems.
Yeah.
He's like, first, I'm gonna win this case for you. Then we're gonna solve this other problem with your daughter where she doesn't have a husband. I got a cousin, I got a brother. He's not all there, he's not gonna get a wife. Let's make this work. Let's make a deal. And he's just like wheeling and dealing. I also
Yeah.
noticed you've got some art that you haven't sold yet. I'll sell that. I know some people that need some art. And I've noticed that you've got some black mold on the bottom of your villa.
We can
I
get
know a friend over here, my cousin
got a
does.
it's from Boston somehow. Hey, bing, bada, boom. We'll get it fixed for you.
Yeah, we bundle all this up for one low price.
So yes, safety was a concern. So in the middle of the
From the
night,
artist gang.
artist gang, she was married
So
to
really the artists were the rappers of
yeah,
of
yeah, some more accurate.
ancient Rome.
Yeah.
1500s Rome.
So and for Artemisia, she was actually like it talks about how she was like as far as how bad she thought it was going to be, he wasn't like unattractive, and he seemed to be a nice man.
That's
So
good.
it was like as positive as it could have been.
So the lawyer really pulled through.
It really
The lawyer is the hero of this story.
It really is. She was able to get married, and unfortunately, though, despite the marriage, she was still very poorly looked down upon in Rome, and so she decided to leave Rome.
They always had to be looking over their shoulder for an art
For an
game
art game.
anyway.
Yeah.
So
So it's no good. So she left Rome and went to Florence. So in Florence, she had to deal with quite a bit more suffering in like a personal arena. So she had 5 children, and 4 of them didn't make it past infancy.
mm,
So she did have one daughter that she named Prudencia after her mother that it did survive. The whole story. She survives to the end.
she's still alive today.
Today. But I think what I want to focus on more, because I think that's how Artemisia lived, was that she still found a great deal of success and overcame like all of these things. Like she was, um, so she was described as being like, by some men, she was described as like scandalous and unladylike. But she was also often described as very strong willed. She was fierce, she was independent, she was resilient, and she was ambitious. She, while in Florence, um, uh, she started making really important connections to really kind of big people. So you might recognize some of these names. The one of them was Michelangelo the Younger. We all know who Michelangelo is, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Sistine Chapel. Right?
Yeah. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. This is his great nephew. So she made connections with him, and they really liked her. There was also Galileo Galilei,
Not the younger, like the real one.
the real one, the
Mm.
scientist. She was super tight with, and they have like, so she also started like learning, and she started writing letters, she started reading. She still was not allowed to purchase her own art supplies, so she wasn't allowed to buy paint, she wasn't allowed to buy canvas. Her husband had to do that, but because she was married, she had access to that through him, because she wasn't allowed to have her own money. um, she also couldn't own property, but through her connections and with the skills that she had, she started kind of making a name for herself, and being able to curate how she wanted people to see her. So she was allowed to buy like clothes and silks and jewelry and that kind of stuff. So she would go, and because she and her husband were struggling with money, and while she's trying to make these connections and get, because she's not getting a lot of um, commissions for like church altars, which was kind of where the big money was. But even though she was very, very talented, there was still a lot of like, but she's a woman, and they didn't want to buy paintings from a woman. So she had to try really hard to be seen as this like reputable lady, this desirable person, and to get her art seen in ways that would be acceptable and like desirable. So she would go and purchase like really nice high lady clothes on credit because they didn't have any money. And then instead of paying, she would give them a painting instead. And so she was like kind of playing that game a little bit, which I think a lot of artists historically have done that. And then she started getting seen by these bigger names, including, are you ready for this name? I know you guys know it. Cosimo the Second, and he is the Cosimo of the Medici family,
Mm.
What?
right?
You know, like when they have a movie like League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, and they're like Albert Einstein, and like Rembrandt or whatever. It's all these random people that somehow come. This is what this feels like. Is
Yeah.
she's assembling a league of sort of extraordinary gentlemen,
Yeah.
but it's all like just the cousin of somebody famous.
Yeah, and that's how you get your ins, right?
Yeah.
So he became a patron of hers, and that was a really big step. And then he, so she would be, you know, doing the best she could to make her art and be selling it and get commissions and that kind of stuff. And through all of this, even though she was having some real struggles with her marriage, so much so that there is also records, they found a trove of letters of hers somewhere. And they're all steamy letters to a guy that is not her husband. So she had a sort of affair. But despite all that, she started getting the commissions that she was looking for. She started getting the recognition that she was looking for. And in July of 1616, she was the first woman ever to be accepted into the Academy of Arts and Drawing, which was a huge school that, no woman had ever been allowed to be accepted into. So it was huge for her. And she had been wanting this for a long time because it also came with some really big benefits for her. So she was able now, with this acceptance into this academy, she was able to purchase her own art supplies.
Ooh.
So she could buy her own paints and her own brushes and her own canvas, which was this huge turning point for her. And so in 1620, she actually left, um, technically with her husband, that they left Florence, even though she was finding a great deal of success there. She was reportedly running from creditors at this time, which again, not uncommon for painters, artists to do at the time. Um, and there wasn't a lot written about this time where she was in, because she went back to Rome in 1620. There's not a lot written about this time other than she did meet with her father, and it was not a good meeting. Like, he was still mad at
Still
her.
be with her.
Yeah.
Being raped.
Yeah. And she was still mad at him for using her as a tool, I guess. And it got so heated.
And then the lawyer came in and went like, I see you have some family problems. Well, it just so happens I'm a semi-licensed family therapist.
Well, the lawyer's brother was, I think, cut from the same cloth. Because even though Artemisia and him were mostly estranged and didn't get along, he still came and was like, "Wait a minute, team, we don't need to be arguing amongst ourselves." And he kind of like saved her from her dad and her brothers.
Really?
Yeah, and she was really grateful. Like, they didn't have what I would say, it's not described as a bad relationship. Like, he was good to her in that he didn't like beat her or anything like that. He wasn't good with money, so he lost quite a bit of her money. Um, but he wasn't, like, by all accounts, he was a good human to her. But still, they didn't really have affection for each other. And so they were both like having affairs that the other one was aware of. And then during that 1620, now that she was in the academy and she could purchase her own arts supplies, she separated from her husband, and they never got back together after that. But they never did officially get a divorce either. Um, and so she stayed there, and this is where she created one of her masterpieces. This is Judith and the Maid Servant. So it's not the one where she's cutting off his head, but it's the one where it's Judith and she's holding up her hand to the candle, and it's just got that really extreme tenebrism. I forget what, the chiaroscuro, and they're like, they've already got the head cut off. And so after she's there for a little bit, she actually decides to go to Naples because it is like the happening place for artists is Naples. Um, and it was such a
Is
big,
this the one?
yes, that's the one. Yeah.
Okay, yes. Also, so she's at the candle. She's also holding the sword.
Yeah.
She had some strong feelings about. She was always painting women
She was.
with
Yeah.
swords.
Yeah, it's funny because when they talk about the like themes of most of her art, it's actually a lot of women stories that are like strong and victorious, which you're like, oh, I wonder if that had to do with your life and who you are. But yeah, a lot of women with swords, a lot of women killing people. She also had a lot of times where she painted themes of women that were like victims, that she painted them as like survivors or victors instead of victims.
Interesting.
So like there's one really famously where I forget the story, but it's these two men that are coming up on this lady that's bathing. And the story is that they rape this woman and she tells them no and they do it anyways. And that's the painting. I don't know why that's a painting that gets done. But she was the first one to paint it where the woman was like turned away and trying to get away from the men, where all the other previous paintings of it was she was like a temptress, you
Yeah.
know? And so she's painting these women in a point of view that is very different from how they're
I thought
depicted.
she was like, and then she's got a sword
And she's got
and she's stabbing them in the face.
I would have liked that. She probably would have liked that too. And then after she has children, there's more paintings of women with children and that kind of stuff. And some people, like in some of the stuff that I read and some of the stuff I watched, are like, so now she had access to a child model and could finally paint children. Because again, she couldn't really like hire a lot of models and
Yeah.
stuff. So most of the paintings are also partially, they think, of women because the best access to a model she has was a big mirror.
Yeah.
So a lot of her paintings have self-portrait like aspects to them because she's her best model. So that's also part of it. And yeah, so let's see. Yeah, so she goes to Naples because it's this big kind of gathering, cool place for artists. And it was just like Josh's like West Side Story, like because the problem was it was also very dangerous for artists because artists in the area would get really mad at the incoming artists because they're like stealing their commissions and they would
Yeah.
like poison their paints or go in like,
Well, you don't drink the paint then. This is an easy one.
yeah, true, but or like do other things to like cause disaster. There was times where people would come and like rip up canvases and do all this like damage.
Like it's showing up just like a game.
Yeah,
Like,
like legit. And I was like,
trash
man,
that man's canvas. Goes over there, throws it up. Be a shame if something happened to your other canvases. I think maybe it's time for you to move on.
to get out of Naples.
Make him an offer he can't refuse.
Yeah, so she had to deal with a lot of that, but she was still able to
And then her response was, I am going to paint a woman cutting your head off.
so help me. There'll be two swords in this one. Um so while she was there, like she was actually really good at making connections, but also keeping connections. So she got to work immediately with connecting herself with artists and musicians and poets of the area because as a lady, education didn't really usually include reading and writing because that's for men, but being able to play an instrument was something that was not uncommon for women to be able to do. So she did have like connection to the music world. And then as she began to make more connections there in Naples and maintained her connections. She has a lot of letters to Galileo. Apparently they like really liked each other. Not in the like
Really
weirdo
like
way. Yeah, no, it was all platonic. But so he helped her quite a lot. Cosimo II also helped her quite a lot. In fact, some of the oldest, or I guess the most recent records that we have of her come from Cosimo Medici or Medici. But she's also written about in poetry because she made connection with the poets. And her paintings are, I mean, no matter who you are, you have to look at them. They're absolutely gorgeous. They're so masterfully done. So I wrote down a snippet of one of the poems that was written about her. This is an English translation, so you know it was originally in Italian, but this poet wrote, um, "Who was the creator, the gracious giver of your brush, if not the winged god? He made you that tool from his soft feathers, and so that your merit is known to the world, he shall make you canvas from his blindfold." Like all of her stuff is from the gods, and
No.
it's like she really is coming into her own here and doing really well. And also, while she's here in Naples, she established a very successful collaborative workshop where, um, and she ran it, which again, another very uncommon thing for a woman to be able to do at this time. And she successfully hired various artists and landscape specialists, and they helped her with her large masterpieces. And so, by all means, she was this like major exception to the rule of what was going on, and kind of paving the way for women to start being more accepted as painters. And she's actually like very viewed as like this sort of feminist icon, for a lot of modern women and research. um, and so I just thought, because like I kept thinking of Caravaggio as like a comparison, because so they talk about she's so influenced by Caravaggio, possibly because she spent all of her time either in her house with her father's painting, who he loved Caravaggio, or in the churches around that had massive Caravaggio altarpieces in these churches. And so I was like, Caravaggio, just like a wild, he could not contain himself, right? Like when when he left Rome and like actually got into the like, he got the knighthood or whatever that he was wanting, and he got all the things he wanted, and then he still messed it up by like killing a guy or whatever, and then was on the run and got captured and put in prison and escaped prison, and then like died in transit. um and it's just like this wild, intense life. And it's really fun to talk about, but I feel like the way she handled herself was like, okay, now I'm established and I'm going to chill out instead of like making a bunch of ruffling a lot of feathers. But the problem with that is kind of the last mystery of Artemisia that we're going to end here with is that nobody really knows when she died or where she's buried. So there was reports that she had died, like it was said originally that she had died in 1642. Um, but Josh is all, I'm gonna solve this. Whipping out your phone. That she died in 1642. But as we said, Cosimo Medici was like, no, like I've always been a patron of her whole life, and I was getting paintings from her as late as 1654, I think. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so then what their best guesstimate is that she probably passed during the plague of 1656, that half of the population of Naples died at that time. So they're guessing she was in it. But there was a headstone that belonged to her, but there was no dates on it. It simply said, "Here lies Artemisia." Um, but the problem with that is during church restorations and bombings from World War II, that headstone and that area was destroyed.
Mm.
So they're not 100% sure where she's at. And since there was no other additional information on her headstone, like when she died or whatever, they're still not sure when she died. But either way, she was painting well into her 60s at the very least, um, still like living and maintaining, doing her best, living her best life till that
Yeah.
plague showed up, maybe.
Well, plagues do tend to
Do
upend
that.
things.
But yeah, that is the master artist of Judith and Holofernes, Artemisia Gentileschi.
Yeah, she is kind of a feminist icon.
Bless you.
Bless you.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
wild all the stuff she was able to accomplish.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, especially with everything that happened. But something that I really just love about her, and something that I feel like I feel a little connection to her, not like a lot, but there's a lot of bad things that happened to her, and she never spoke of herself as a victim. She never considered herself a victim, and even in her art, she depicted herself as victorious, as overcoming, or other women in other stories as strong and overcoming. And that's something that I've always wanted to do in my life, right? Like I've had bad things happen, but I don't want those to be my defining things. And even though I do love myself some emo music, I'm not some like hair in my eyes emo person like crying about the bad things, but like I want to be strong, and I want to bring about like strength and growth and beauty and joy. So, yeah, I think that's what she did.
Yeah.
Pretty cool.
Yeah.
She made a lot of paintings of women with swords.
Yep. Which truthfully, a woman doesn't want a sword.
Yeah.
If people gave me a sword as a gift, I would always be happy.
Yeah.
So, especially Lord of the Rings swords. Those are so good. I should craft my own sword.
Out of clay.
It wouldn't work well. Maybe I'll do the mock-up that way. And then I'll go somewhere and be like, "Oh, master crafts person,
Make me this out of metal.
yeah, make this out of metal for me, please. I want a sword." And then I can paint it.
Yeah.
So there we go. Yay.
Very nice.
Did she have any like contemporaries? Like, were there other women that achieved a similar level of success in her time period?
There's a couple that are talked about, but the like when I was looking at the most famous female artists, they were after her.
Yeah.
Most like what they talked about most was women of the time. If they were in the arts, they were doing those like lower class paintings of like flowers and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Or like if they got hired, they would be painting like the flowers and background stuff. But generally, um, reaching her level of acclaim was
Super rare.
yeah, super rare and much later talked about.
Hmm.
For women of the same kind of level. So I like um sometimes I feel like a lot of the things we talk about are very like male dominate, it's like mostly men, especially when we go back in time. I think there probably was more women doing more things that's just not recorded. So it's hard to say, but as far as like historically recorded, she made enough, she ruffled enough feathers that she really achieved um you know, a level that was equal to a lot of men that wasn't dreamed of by most women, which I think is super cool that she was like, "No, I'm not backing down." And then some men were like, "If we still burned witches."
They did still burn witches back
Yeah, they
then.
did actually.
Well, crushed them under rocks.
Not in Rome. Did they?
I don't know. You're the witch hunter.
I'm not.
Well, like in Rome, I don't know. Rome really doesn't feel like it was known for burning
Listen, as they
witches.
say, when in Rome, burn
the
those
witches.
witches. It's a famous phrase.
Okay. That's yeah, we're gonna end there.
When in Rome, burn some witches. Famous phrase. So now every time you hear someone say, "Well, when in Rome," you're gonna go, "Burn
Burn
some
some
witches."
witches.
All right.
If you say so. So yeah, thanks for listening. Go do some art, don't do any crimes, and bye.
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 What's the point of living in this world?
If you can't scoot, you're gonna get that tattoo. Scoot or die.
I'm glad I started recording for that. I'm gonna put that in the pod.
How about scoot and die?
What's the
That you are such an old man.
point?